All right. So, as I mentioned earlier, the issue of gender-based violence is obviously a very pertinent one. It's a pervasive one. You have all read the statistics. You have all seen the information. We know that violence against women and girls impacts 1 in 3 women in the entire world. As much as we are involved in women's movements, as much as we are in feminist spaces, we know that oftentimes, whether it's online now, we see, or behind closed doors, or if you're walking down the street, especially for publicly visible women, violence is something that you might be confronted with. And it is more important than ever, especially as a Nala community, for us to think about how we're going to address this issue head on, because there is no feminist movement, there is no economic justice, there is no ensuring that the visibility of women is at where it needs to be if women do not feel safe in their own skin. If they don't feel safe to be authentically themselves, they're not going to be authentically themselves. They're not going to take up space online and offline. And so it's important for us to ensure that so much of this conversation is rooted in ensuring that women are safe to do the things that they aspire to do. So to start us off, I am actually going to try to learn a little bit more and have every single one of you also share a little bit more about your personal journey and your stories and the challenges that you see in the work that you're doing. And to start us off, I'm actually going to address you, Ms. Kahungu, about your role as the Secretary of the Women's Council in Namibia. And in particular, this is my first time in Namibia. I'm curious to know if you could just lay the land on what are the challenges that women and girls are facing, what are the challenges that you see every single day, even though we know that Namibia ranks so highly in the gender equity space.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Madam Moderator, through you, let me first appreciate the opportunity provided to me here so that we discuss matters related to a topic of gender-based violence against women, but we are focusing on party politics. I want to observe one challenge that people are being abused or they have been abusing, but they do not know that they are doing that. Therefore, what is most important to us today is to discuss and define what is gender-based violence, specifically in politics. You asked me also a question to tell you what challenges I'm experiencing in my portfolio as a secretary for Swapapa Women's Council. I am happy to indicate that the previous speakers, lucky enough, have already presented to us what is happening in Namibia. And I think looking at Commissioner Katamila here will help us to give the statistics and to be specific on what is happening relating to gender-based violence in Namibia. I have to continue by saying that the women's rights have been violated, especially by manipulating the women's thinking and participation in decision-making processes. Women being manipulated, especially at that processes. And I have to indicate that lack of skills and understanding, these facilitated mental abuse because many women, they lack skills and they lack understanding, and abusers are using those opportunities. I want to conclude on this question by indicating that insecurity and two social matters, these normalize gender-based violence to be a norm. And most importantly, low self-esteem. Low self-esteem, which is caused by lack of skills and understanding, is the one which makes women to present an opportunity to abusers, and they do so as they please. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. We know that. Yes. I think on the point of low self-esteem and lack of awareness of rights, especially when we're dealing with the reality of violence also in the digital space, where even just awareness of our rights or lack of support for mental health when some of this stuff is happening definitely does contribute as well to the ongoing reality of some of these challenges. So thank you so much for sharing that. Joanna, my next question is for you. I know that your journey in politics has been a really powerful one. You have been really vocal, unapologetic about your values, about your feminist values, but unfortunately, as a result, it has made you a target. Like many women in politics, your voice has been seen as something that can shake the status quo. And because it is doing that, you have experienced unnecessary, unexplicable levels of violence. And so I'm wondering if you could speak to your experience as an elected official and some of the unfortunate reality of violence that you have gone through because of it.
Thank you very much, Rana, and thank you so much for inviting me to this panel. Yes, as you have heard, my name is Joanna Mamombe from Zimbabwe, and I'm currently a member of parliament, serving my second term in the Parliament of Zimbabwe, and I currently chair a committee on environment. Just to give you a brief background, what Zimbabwe looks like politically. We gained our independence in 1980, and I think in the region we're one of the countries to gain our independence. And since 1980 in Zimbabwe, we've had one political party being in the ruling government. And in 2013, we had a very big positive step.
That are going late. Oh. Just the two of them. Who is Lamai?
Is there another Joanna?
I think there might be another mic. If you're speaking into another mic, please don't. All right.
Jordan, program manager, Open Society Foundation.
Where is that coming from? It's working. Hello? I think you could keep going. Yeah, keep on.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, so I was just going to share with you that in 2013, we had a referendum where we came up with a new constitution for Zimbabwe. And I'm proud, as a young politician in Zimbabwe, that we have one of the best constitutions in the world. But let's look at the constitutionalism. To say Zimbabwe, for example, we have the constitution is clear on gender representation. It's clear on protecting women. It's clear on actually equal participation between men and women in different leadership positions. But has that been happening in Zimbabwe? That is the big question in the room. To say most of the countries, particularly mine, sharing my experiences, we have a constitution that is clear. We have different policies that actually support the participation of women, not only just support, but also protect and empower participation of women. But what we have seen over the years since independence, women are relegated from the positions of power. When you are a politician who is in the hierarchy of power, you are not protected. In actual fact, you are exposed to a lot of violence. You become a victim of different forms of violence, as contrary to the Constitution of Zimbabwe, which is really pains my heart to say people go out there to advocate, to come up with very good documents, to come up with very good constitutions, but let alone we don't go and implement the constitution. So for me, what is lacking in Zimbabwe is the constitutionalism. Do we really uphold the constitution? Which is something that drove me to join politics in Zimbabwe, to say we must account to the people of Zimbabwe. Nobody is above the law. We want to make sure that everybody who is a perpetrator of violence is brought to book. So my journey in politics did not start as a member of parliament, Rana. I have been a student activist since my days in university, where I participated in academic freedoms, just human rights in general. And violence did not just start when I became a member of parliament. I've always experienced different forms of violence. But for me, in 2018 campaigning, I thought this was a stop gap measure to violence. But little did I know that even when you become a member of parliament, you're actually exposing yourself to more violence. So I have seen different forms, from online abuse, talk about the physical violence, but it comes in stages because it's quite systematic in politics. You know, so what they do for young women in politics, it can start as semiotic, you know, threat, whereby, you know, they will be testing you. How strong are you in politics? How strong are you in terms of managing, you know, the violence? So they can start with abusive language. You know, when they see that you can stand that, you can actually fight what they're trying to bring to you, they move a top notch higher in terms of how they perform their violence on different women in politics. They can go physical. I'm talking about physical torture. I'm talking about abductions. And I haven't been actually, I have been experiencing a lot, you know, of violence in Zimbabwe, from online abuse, from torture, physical torture, and, you know, just sexual harassment as well. So this has been my journey. But what we need to know as young women, that the journey has never been easy. Here we were talking about women who have occupied different positions in politics. From Liberia, we've heard about Mama Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. In Namibia here, we're hearing the story of a woman who is rising to be president. So those stories must actually educate us to say, it's never going to be easy. What can we do as women to actually make sure that we protect ourselves from violence and we continue to fight? Because at the end of the day, leaving the arena of fighting is not an option. So let's continue to fight.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And obviously the room resonates with so much of your words, and I appreciate your vulnerability in sharing parts of your story. And I see your courage and bravery in fighting not just for yourself, but for all women in politics and all women who dare to be that change. So thank you so much. The next question is for Commissioner Katamila. So in your capacity as the regional commander of Karas, you have seen the extent which violence faces women, I'm sure, as being on the front lines and responding to the violence that women are confronted with in Namibia. So I wanted to read some statistics for you about the past couple of years and the cases of violence that are prevalent in Namibia. So in 2018, there were 5,000 cases of gender-based violence that were reported, and a 2013 report by the Ministry of Gender Equity and Child Welfare indicated that 33% of women aged 15 to 49 experienced physical violence, which is on par with international standards for the kinds of violence that women experience. So I would love to hear from you, as someone who is responding in trying to protect women who are confronted with this kind of violence. What do you see? What are the cases looking like? And why might someone not come forward if they are experiencing this reality?
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me. Allow me to align myself to the protocol that has already been established. Yes, it is true indeed that women are victims of violence. And most often this violence is perpetrated by us men. So yes, the statistics that you have just given us are more than just correct. But I would like to go a step further and say that this is but only the cases that are being reported. So many cases are going unreported. And most of the time, women are manipulated by their perpetrators. They are threatened that if they would report, they would be subjected to more forms of violence. However, at the same time, I would also like to celebrate our democracy and our constitution that addresses so many of these issues. Taking into account the fact that we have just listened to the previous speaker speaking about violence against women in politics. Let me take it from a Namibian perspective. And please, I'm saying this because this is factual information that I would like to give through. In Namibia, we really enjoy constitutional democracy. For the past decades, 3 decades and more, that I've been serving in the Namibian police, we've never had any case criminally registered that arised from women in politics being exposed to any form of physical violence. There are, to an extent, harassment that is taking place. Yes, there are psychological violence that are being perpetrated, but if one look at who are the perpetrators, it's mostly coming from within society. I know, I don't want to talk about what happens in political structures. The kind of work that I do requires for me to be apolitical. I deal with people at all levels. So if there are issues related to violence that are happening in political structures, I'm certain that within the political structures, there are also ways and means of how to address these issues. But I would like to be quoted when I say that in terms of registered cases of violence being perpetrated on women that are in politics, there's none registered that I'm aware of. I stand to be corrected. What I'm aware of is that, yes, there is political bickering that is going on, and most of the would-be psychological harassment, whatever you'd like to call it, is mostly happening during the times of campaigning. And what we've also learned to observe is that, yes, it's happening and it's being perpetrated, but of record, there is no case registered that we are aware of. Does it happen? In my personal opinion, I would say yes, it does. It has just never came to the fore that it being reported. However, let me use this platform to encourage women to come to the fore and report these cases, because that is exactly why we are here in Namibia providing policing service. We cannot be talking on matters that are not reported, that are not on record. So I would like to encourage all women in all spheres of society to report any form of criminality that is being perpetrated towards them. When we talk about gender-based violence, it is quite the problem. And I will also confirm my fellow Namibian men, some of which are likely going to probably ask for my head, it's happening. And it's even happening with people in uniform. So the cases that are registered are being investigated. At times, because of the way in which the police organization, obviously if it's a criminal case, it needs to be investigated in order to go to court. But within the department, at an administrative level, there are so many matters that are dealt with administratively by the organization in itself that result in members of the Namibian police being reduced in rank. And this is information that is not commonly known because it is something that happens in-house. But it is there, it's always being addressed, and I will continue to advocate for women to stand up for their rights and to report these cases. And that's the way in which it can be addressed.
Thank you so much. We love the transparency, the openness, and just the recognition that there is such a real issue around reporting. And we know that these numbers are not reflective of the reality that so many people are actually being confronted with. So thank you so much. Ms. Kaunga, we're back to you. So you have been not only a leader in the political space, but you have also been an incredible advocate to ensure that more women and more young people are seeing themselves in politics and are actually not only aspiring, but are actually becoming and entering into the political space. But we know, we just heard right now how difficult it is and how difficult it can be if you are a young person, if you are a woman, to be publicly visible and to put yourself out there. It's a huge personal risk, it's a huge physical, emotional risk that someone might take. So I'm wondering if you could speak to what protections are in place for young people, for women who do decide that they're going to venture into the political space.
Thank you very much. Maybe before I go further, allow me just to amend a little bit your statement when you mentioned that it's a bit risky, problematic, like you paint a picture of a very problem, something for a young woman to become a leader or to take up a leadership position. I wouldn't be happy for us to leave this room believing like that, because that is not really the case. As in nature, all good things are coming, of course, to those who wait, but there is no good thing which come easily. As we were instructed, quoting from the Bible, that your bread, you have to eat it after only you sweat. That is also applicable to young people if they are to get positions. What am I trying to drive to? I am saying, just because you are a young person, this does not open a ticket for you to just to occupy. You need to fulfill some requirements so that you become a leader in a given position. I do not know if you remember in the morning or if it was mentioned now, the Young People's Parliament. I have also to mention that since we have now the Minister of Information, Communication and Technology, she served as a junior mayor of the city of Windhoek. She served it before she becomes 25, while I only became to serve as a mayor when I was above 40. So already by then, as a young person, could have the opportunity to get the position. What I'm trying to say is it was just to correct that if we believe it like that, that it's not easy. You want to ask me, or you ask me, what is that in place for young people, be it men and women, to get positions? I can talk about SWAPO Party where I serve. We have constitutional rights, as you heard about it in the morning, that both female and male, they can occupy positions. I can say that the institutional tools are there. However, the requirements or the ways on the criteria on how to implement are not very clear. And that is where the loophole is. What is now required, as it was mentioned in the morning, it's for young persons organizations. In this case, I can refer to SWAPO Party Youth League, since I'm representing a political party's wing. So they have to come up with criteria to be followed so that they have many young people who occupy positions. But like any other organization, you need to meet some requirements. Why? Because you need also to bring at the table some expertise, some skills. So in short, the institutional tools are there. However, the criteria on the implementations might be problematic, and this might influence also the young people not to occupy the required positions. But I have to also be honest here, and maybe to say factual issues, that at times when young people are given opportunities, they feel, no, we are not yet ready. At times they are the one giving away their opportunities. Again, we go back to abuse. When you do not know your rights, when you do not know if you are being abused or not, when a senior person coming to you to say, please do not stand for this position now, wait, you think that the person is on your side, meanwhile, the person is abusing you mentally. So all this, they will only realize, as it was said in the morning by the vice president, that young people follow us, be with us, so that we groom you. I am happy to read here that we need to foster together. We now senior people, we must be enablers, and then we mobilize you. For us to enable you to do something and to mobilize you to do something is when you work together with us. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's such a great reminder that it is important for us to step into our power when we do have opportunity, and a reminder that there's such incredible potential mentorship in this room that we can gravitate to as young people in order to further engage politically. Thank you so much. So my next question is for Joanna. You talked about some of the challenges that you are seeing within your context as an elected official, as a political representative in Zimbabwe. What are some of the effective interventions that you're seeing, and what are some of the things that you're fighting for to ensure safety, but also seeing more women in the political space?
Thank you very much, Rana. I will share my personal experiences, what I've also done in terms of making sure that the space that I operate in is very safe. The first thing is mentorship, as you rightly said, that you need a very good support system as a young person who is entering into politics. Because the political space sometimes can be very lonely, where you feel that you don't have anyone to turn to, and sometimes you really feel that you're suffocating, and also your cup is empty. And like we always say in our spaces, that you can't actually pour into other people's cups when yours is empty. So what we need, the first thing, is mentorship. Let's have strong support systems. And I mean, with mentorship, this could be a structural coaching where you can actually enhance your capacities and your capabilities. Because once you do that, honestly speaking, you know, when you're a young woman who is in politics, you're under scrutiny. So it means that can also support you in terms of how you perform your duties in parliament or in public office. When you perform, then it means also you're reducing, you know, abuse as well, because sometimes you're easily attacked because you've made mistakes and so forth. Not saying that making mistake is bad in politics, because we are all learning, we are on a journey, we are on a pathway. Then the second thing for me, it's education. I think we have been talking about education here, learning from other women who have walked through the journey. Just by reading stories, to just tell yourself that you're not alone, you're not walking alone in the journey. Other women have actually faced the same challenges that you're facing. I think that is quite encouraging. It's also very motivating. So just getting to know other women, connecting with other women in different spaces who have gone through the journey, it's very important. And for me, it has helped me to say, this is sometimes, it's a repeat of what has happened during the colonialism in Zimbabwe, where we've seen people like Margaret Longo, where we've seen people in South Africa during apartheid, like Winnie Madikizela Mandela, and so forth. So sometimes these things, it's not something new, but you have seen the repeat of it. So by reading and understanding what other women have gone through will actually, you know, be a source of motivation and a source of inspiration to you. But the third thing that is also very close to me, and something that I've pushed since the time I've been in politics, is to seek justice. We are here with the commissioner here, who is saying that as a young woman who might be facing persecution or victimization, go and report to the police. That is very important. Whether the police is not going to act or not, make sure that there's a record to show that there's a young woman who has been victimized. There's a young woman who has been tortured. There's a young woman who has faced some form of violence. So for me, seeking justice is one of the most important things. It might not come now. It can take months. It can take years. But eventually, and I want to quote the words of Dr. Martin Luther King, when he says that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. Eventually, justice will prevail. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm sure that you also in your space, in your leadership, in your visibility, also inspire a lot of young people. I remember I actually ran for office myself in the U.S., and I remember the thing that really did keep me going was having mentorship and having other women who had been down that path, who had experienced similar challenges, who ensured me about that light at the end of the tunnel and kept me going. And so thank you for that reminder. Commissioner, I'm wondering if you could speak to a positive intervention that you have seen. Obviously, you talked a little bit about some of the challenges. Some people might not feel like they want to report. We know the pervasiveness of the violence in your framing. What are some of the interventions that you have seen that have been most effective in getting people to report, one, and two, minimizing the incidence of gender violence?
Thank you very much. The most important platform is Police Public Relations Committee, the engagement between the police and the community. You cannot be policing people in isolation. It will never work. So, constant engagement with members of the community, constant engagement with those that are affected can only color the picture to the point that you would realize what exactly are the problems. Let me take a point out of the organization of NAMPO. When the police, after independence started, likewise the Correctional Service and the Namibia Defense Force, these entities were mostly male-dominated. In terms of its structure, and over the years, as we continued, the recruitment aspect in itself was also affected, to the extent that less than 30% of the new recruits were female, whereas the 70% and more were mostly men. Now, from the Namibian House, Parliament, we have learned that they have achieved gender parity. When we come to the Namibian police, in its senior management, I am proud to say that we are heading towards that. We are at 48% senior female officers. Very importantly,
It's amazing.
our Deputy Inspector General for Administration is a female. The first Deputy Inspector General in the Namibian police in the history, and she's been there serving for more than 5 years. Moreover, she's the Africa Executive for Interpol.
Oh, wow.
So then when we are looking at the sphere across the regional commanders, there are regional commanders that are commissioners heading regions. We have got heads of directorate that are female, that are in charge of those directorates. And I'm proud to say that my career and where I found myself today have been paved because I was mentored by female police officers. And I continue to mentor officers, regardless of their gender. But what is something that we probably have difficulty going forward, and this is mostly to us men. We come from a patriarchal society.
Yeah.
And when we talk about aspects of gender, we as long as men do not understand the following, we will have difficulty. Gender roles are socially constructed, but they are culturally influenced. Our culture has a lot to do with why women were left behind. And once we start addressing these issues, we can ourselves achieve greater heights. For the first time in my career as a police officer, because those opportunities were not there were conferences for men, and that was conferences in general. But for the first time in the history of the Namibian police force, in the last, say 3 weeks ago, we attended for the very first time a men's conference where we would be allowed to speak on issues that affects us as men, but equally that affects women in the line of work that we are doing. So I will continue to advocate in saying that women should speak up. And when it comes to issues of gender-based violence, most often than none, women are not believed. They would come and they would report something, but you don't take them seriously. So we would encourage to say, listen to the complainants and believe them. That is very much important. Moreover, we need to continue to train our police officers to deal with victims of crime. It's been happening. In fact, we have a fully fledged directorate dedicated to gender, and they are working towards getting us there. But training is one of the tools that we can use to overcome the problems that we are facing.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Really appreciate it. Thank you all. Now we have an opportunity to take 2 questions from the audience. So, do I select them? I saw this hand up first, if anyone has a mic. So we'll take the 2 questions at the same time. I see there's 2 right here, and there's also one right there. So 2 questions. No question? No question? 2 questions? Yeah, sure, feel free to. 2 questions. 2. I know. Yes, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name
Oh,
is...
sorry, just one. Oh, okay. Did you want to say something?
I wanted to add something.
Just really quickly, and then we'll take 2 questions.
Thank you very much. Before questions from the followers here, I made it a point to myself that I will say something in relation to trainings. Let us make it wild to make it capacity building. Earlier on, all of us agreed with the need to capacitate for people to understand. And these workshops or trainings must not only talk about gender-based violence, but let us rather encourage people to be educated, to be capacitated, so that when you have young people who are able to carry out responsibility and they do qualify, I strongly believe that the violence will be lesser than a person who occupy a position but do not fulfill all the requirements. Also, one thing which makes women not to be, at times, I hope Doctor is following me also, because I'm going to go to her now. Women need to behave as expected from them naturally and by the community. Commissioner here mentioned the culture and the community. So politically, it is not very difficult at the lower level. But when you are upgrading yourself to go up to higher level, you need to meet some requirements. And these requirements, you are expected also to behave in a different manner. I can see the time is against us, but all I'm trying to say is politically, socially, and culturally, you are expected to behave in a given manner. And this might also protect you from being abused. Allow me to talk about feminism and feminist. Okay, they are
Yes,
saying
'cause
time there.
So actually, we will no longer be able to do questions just to honor people's time and honor time. So if you do have a question, you could feel free to ask it later after the panel. But thank you again so much to everyone who is on the panel. Thank you for your words, thank you for your time, and thank you for all the work that you do.
Thank you so much, Rana.
Thank you so much, Rana.